Okay, let's get to the sheer tool effect with sheer fabric effect with watercolor. By the way, for the hat, I used the yellow ochre with some burnt sienna in it, painted that over the whole shape. Then, while it was still wet, added a little bit of umber to those two colors, and then just kind of, suggested some of the rims of that hat, right? So not painted every single detail, but just suggested the form a little bit. So let's jump to the white of the tool. Some of us have sets that have liquid white in tube form. That's great. What I happen to have today is cake form, so that works as well. So what I've got is a wet brush. I worked up the white on my brush. The amount of color is going to be a little bit trial and error. So sometimes it's good to have a little piece of scratch paper to have a little bit of color on it and see how transparent it's going to be. So I'm gonna take my fairly small brush and I'm gonna look at the position of this fabric. It starts kind of way up here at the top. So the transparency that I have here is, I don't know, somewhere in the middle, right? So you can see through it, but it's not super, super watery. The tulle of the hat kind of overlaps her cheek just a little bit right there. And if you notice that your white starts to pick up some of the color underneath it, just, wash out your brush each time so that you're not dragging that through every time you put your brush on the painting. So I'm going to go back in the opposite direction this time, and I'm going to use just a little wider of a stroke. Again, I don't want to go back and forth too much. Picked up a little bit of gray in there, so I'm cleaning my brush a little bit. I noticed that the fabric gets a little bit more kind of gathered and opaque here in the middle. So I'm going to pick up just a little more of that white and try to make that happen here. And maybe it also overlaps the hair and the face just a little bit closer up this way. So I'm pull that in just a little more. Sometimes if you don't have enough water in your brush as you're doing this, it's not actually, ironically, it's not going to be opaque enough, but you do want to have enough paint in there that you're not just erasing the color that you're painting on top of. So you want that to cover, but not cover completely, right? It's totally a balance. All right, so maybe this is good for my effect over here on the right side. I'm noticing it trails off just a little bit too much right there, so I'm going to close that up just a little bit. And maybe add just a little more white paint in this part. Let's come back down here to the bottom. I'm going to clean my brush just in case I've picked up any gray. Let's go back over to my white. I'm going to work that into my brush. Down here, below the chin, you know, I've painted the chin, I've painted these shadows on the chin as well. But now what I'm going to do is to take that white and I'm going to make this kind of opaque knot shape. And something you may notice that when you're painting white on top of colors, the temperature of the white gouache and the white watercolor that you use is always going to be a little bit cooler, right? So it can almost take on a kind of a bluish cast. So sometimes what you need to do is to put a little bit of yellow, you know, something like yellow ochre in your white to warm up that color just slightly. You don't want to dull it too much with other colors because, you know, obviously you want it to look like it's a bright white, but warming it up can be helpful. So I've got a little more kind of concentration of my white there, but now I'm gonna follow through. There's kind of the end of the knot and the rest of the tulle that trails off over the neck. All right, so let's come over here to this side so that we get another look at overlapping, you know, overlapping our skin, the hair, etc. So working up my white. This one moves, sorry, the camera angle's not the best. This one moves over here from behind the front of the hair, right about there. And then in front of the hair against the cheek. Picking up just a little more white because it really is opaque and really white right here. Putting in another layer in that section. And here's a part where it widens out and becomes much more transparent. So I'm going to kind of shape that a little bit there. And if I feel like it's too opaque, I'm just going in with just a little water. And it's not a bad thing to stop every once in a while with this process just to make sure you're not overdoing it. So maybe for now this could be kind of about the level of opacity that I want, but you know, I'll let it dry and see what I feel a little later. Let's see, other parts of the tulle that overlap other things. We've got a piece of it overlapping the top of the hat, right, or the brim of the hat. So if I were to paint that same idea, I want to pick up my white. The part of it looks like it comes, I would have the background painted, of course, but looks like it comes right over the tip of the hat in kind of an almost triangular ribbon, end of the ribbon shape. And And because this one is just a little more flat, not overlapping itself, it just gets a little bit more transparent, right? So there's a little less overlap. Has it, whoops, too much water. It has a little bit of a stronger edge over here on the left, so that's what I was attempting to drop in there. So let's see. We probably got the transparent effect pretty well, but again, I'm going to let this dry a little bit because I feel like it could probably be just a little bit more white in some places. This part is almost dry, so maybe I'll go ahead and add just a little bit while we're still here in the video. Work up a little more of my white. I'm not going to do this all over, but just in a couple of places. So maybe there, maybe here along an edge. Maybe right here where it overlaps the face. And I also feel like the knot could be just a little more opaque. So again, adding, this part is a little bit wet still, so I think I need to let that dry a little more. But I could go on top of that area with some more white, paint another opaque layer on top, you know, and pretty much do that anywhere where I felt like it needed to be just a little more white, right? Maybe that needs to happen on this side too. But the key is definitely balance. Try not to overdo it, right? So you're still keeping some of that transparency in there, but you're using the white to overlap all of those darker colors that you painted underneath. So there are still some things that I've kind of anticipated having, you know, covering. And one of them is this little part of the cheek that feels a little bit uneven to me. So maybe I'll move the fabric in front of it, even if I'm not sure that's right proportionally. But hopefully that helps a little bit in terms of painting something that is sheer fabric over watercolor areas that have some color to them, right? So probably the next step would be letting this dry again so that I can put just a little more, for example, in the knot, any places that start to look in a photo a little more opaque, right? You can add that white. Add a tiny bit of yellow ochre to the white so that you can warm it up if it needs it. Okay.